We have to tell the truth about even those we vote for. That's why I don't endorse them. I vote for them.
Activist, author, and public intellectual Dr. Cornel West was on CNN with Anderson Cooper to discuss the Joe Biden-Kamala Harris ticket. Now, before I play this clip for you, which is fantastic, as you're going to see, I want to remind you of something coming up at the end of this month. August 30th, Movement for a People's Party Convention. So I think it's important to discuss what should be built outside the Democratic Party to help put pressure on the party to actually serve the people. And of course, in lieu of them doing that, actually build a real party outside the Democratic Party as one of many ways, one of many strategies to push for real change. But Cornel West, the headlining speaker here, along with Nina Turner. So check that out at the end of the month. I'll also link to it below the video to this page so you can register or remind yourself of it. But now, let me get to this clip on CNN, Cornel West discussing Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
You've been critical of Harris in the past. I know at one point I think you called her a centrist candidate who acts progressive. Do you think those who've criticized her prosecutorial record, or maybe her record as Attorney General, will be able to see past it? I mean, obviously, right now the choices are Biden, Harris, or Trump, Pence.
Right. I think right now we've got to be part of an anti-fascist coalition of conscience. You see our dear sister use Martin Luther King Jr.'s language, coalition of conscience. We've got to make sure Trump leaves the White House one way or another, either by election, or if he loses and he won't leave, then some of us will have to just go and escort the brother. You know what I mean? It's time to go. You've done your damage. But we can't be under any illusions. When Biden and Harris get in there, if they still tied to Wall Street, still tied to the militarism, Africa, if they still tied to not dealing with quality public education, if they're still tied to their same old neoliberal elites, then we're just going to have another slow disaster rather than a quick catastrophe. With Trump, you got a quick catastrophe. He's got to go. That's why I myself, even as a radical, and I just want Trump people to know, I'm a radical. My dear sister Harris is not a radical. She is she's a centrist and a moderate. I love the sister. She's my AKA sister and everything. But at the same time, I recognize that when it comes to the serious class struggles that are going on, the class war of the bosses against workers, she hasn't always been on the side of the workers. Neither has Biden.
What's interesting, because
Biden linked to the major mass incarceration regime in the modern world. He helped create that. You know what I mean? So that we have to tell the truth about even those we vote for. That's why I don't endorse them. I vote for them because I try to stay true to Curtis Mayfield's music. When he's talking about moving on up, he's talking about integrity, honesty, decency. He's talking about vision. He's talking about courage. He's talking about generosity. He's not just talking about winning the next election. And see, it's in our musicians and our artists that they set the standards. And when they play Curtis, I said, they messing with a genius from Chicago now. They messing with the great black musical tradition now. So this is not a plaything. And yet I do think at this moment we've got to push for those too, even though I love my Green Party folk and I love my movement for People's Party that we're going to be wrestling with Nick, because in the end, I don't think the Democratic Party is going to be strong enough as an institution to really follow through on the kind of things that William Barber and the others are talking about in terms of fighting poverty and keeping alive the legacy of Martin King, Fannie Lou Hamer.
Cornel West lays it out. Here is a guy who is a radical, a self-described radical, discussing how he does not endorse Biden and Harris, but he is voting for them. Because voting is a tool. Voting is not the expression of all your hopes and desires. Voting is a tool. Right now, because of the situation that you're put in of Biden or Trump, using voting as a tool, you're going to use it, or you should be using it, to vote out the neo-fascist. That's how it can best be used right now, is voting out the neo-fascist, while also at the same time building that outside pressure. So this is something I've discussed probably too much. Because there's still, look, I don't think it's a lot of people, but there is still a contingent of people that don't understand how their power can be used. Because if you just look at politics as voting every 4 years, you're missing the bigger picture. Actual change is made from the ground up. It's not by electing the right person. It's from the ground up. So whether you look at civil rights, gay rights, the New Deal, there were pressure on each of those administrations to follow through. And if you have a neo-fascist whose only course of action when it comes to movements is to throw peaceful protesters in jail, you're not making any progress there. In fact, you're going backwards and causing us to have to fight fights that we already won, having to refight these fights. So the focus right now, I think it's obvious. And he's able to acknowledge, this is what's so great about Cornel West. He's able to both acknowledge the total failures of Joe Biden, the emptiness of Kamala Harris, while at the same time understanding that this moment calls to vote out a neo-fascist, using your vote as a tool to vote out a fascist. I'd rather fight a neoliberal than fight a fascist. It's just easier. It's a lot easier to fight a neoliberal than it is to fight a fascist. So, he brings up great points there as well about Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, and they simply do not have that class struggle background. They don't care about the working class, and it's going to require movement on the ground, and protests and whatever it is to put pressure on a Biden White House to do anything at all. But at the same time, he also acknowledges here that there is a bigger threat in the White House right now. And what also is great about Cornel West is he is I think he sounds very reasonable to a lot of people who may not consider themselves to be, progressive or on the left or radicals, because he's able to hold multiple truths at once and understand where his power can be used. And understand that, hey, look, if he's on television, on CNN to a mass audience, it's important to appear reasonable as a radical, as somebody on the extreme left discussing the facts of Joe Biden's history, the facts of Kamala Harris's history and her emptiness. It's important to discuss those facts while also acknowledging the danger that is Donald Trump. And when you are able to do that to a wider audience who normally would not consider themselves to be radical or on the left, you begin to plant seeds in those individuals watching, allowing them to maybe consider, hey, Cornel West, this guy, he's making a lot of sense. Maybe I should pay more attention to his point of view of the world. So, and one more thing I want to mention here, which I've mentioned before, but it's important to mention discussing Harris and Biden. Neither Biden or Harris have the political talent of a Bill Clinton or a Barack Obama. So there's always that worry that, with a neoliberal White House, a Democratic White House, that they are able to shut down any anger, any protest movement that may pop up simply because of their political talent, their ability to give grandiose speeches and make people feel good about themselves. Well, Joe Biden doesn't have that talent. Kamala Harris has moments. But if you saw her speech when she accepted the running mate position with Joe Biden, it was very cookie cutter Democratic BS. They're not going to be able to shut down the movement that already exists. When you have an eviction crisis looming, mass wealth inequality, millions more now without health care because they lost their jobs, and you have a ridiculous system where health care is tied to your employer for millions of people. They're not going to be able to address that with some means-tested bullshit. People are going to demand and going to expect more, because once Trump is out, what's the excuse? Once Trump is out, what is the excuse that Democrats have? So you're only going to have more of an ability to build a left-wing and pissed-off movement if there's a Democrat in the White House during this crisis, which of course will continue. This pandemic isn't going away in November if Biden wins. It's going to continue. The effects of it will continue. So Wouldn't you want to, capitalize on this moment and how horrible things are for people, capitalize on that and put that pressure on a Democratic Party? That's how I'm viewing this. So, look, if you don't want to listen to me, I get it. But listen to Cornel West, the man that is headlining the Movement for a People's Party convention.